Hello and welcome back on this sunny, chilly Tuesday early evening. It's a Pick Swap podcast. As usual, I'm James Brand. I'm here with Sean Bernard. Sean, how you doing, brother?
Pretty good. Just like James Harden, Philadelphia has always been my preferred destination, so
Yep.
I could not be happier.
Yeah, man, that's a crazy thing to hear from a guy like James Harden. And we're going to talk a ton about that today. Talk about the Harden presser, the Simmons presser. But before we get into that, we want to reiterate our sponsorship with BetUS. We're super excited to announce our new sponsorship with BetUS, which is the leading online sportsbook and casino on the market. They've been in the industry for 25 years and currently expanding, which is we are super excited to be a part of here at the Pick Swap Podcast. Make sure to log on to BetUS and feel a little bit more involved in the game and use our promo code PickSwap as a first-time depositor to cash in on some great opportunities. Sean, I know you have a little bit to talk about today with the BetUS, what we're going to be talking about with the lines and everything for tonight. So fill us in here.
Yeah, man. You can follow the link right in our description below to go right to the site and go and cash in on the pick swap promo from there. Sixers 2-point underdogs versus the Celtics tonight. I think we're pulling out a win tonight. So plus 115 on the money line. And they're also at 104 on the team total, which I think is a friendly number. And personally, I like a lot. So exciting stuff there. And make sure to jump all over that.
Yeah, man, and the betting is getting more and more conducive with sports. So the earlier in, the less you're missing out. So get on to BetUS, use our code PickSwap, and get started and bet with us. So to talk about what we're really going to talk about today, the two main things is Ben's introductory press conference with the Nets was this morning. Immediately following that was James Harden's press conference, introductory press conference, and Paul Millsap. Let's not forget with the Sixers immediately following that. So let's talk about Ben first, get this out of the way, because I would like to spend a little bit more time on Harden and the Sixers, because I think this is starting our transition into stopping talking about Ben
Yeah.
finally.
Yeah.
So today might be the last time we talk about him at length. Hopefully, I'm hoping there's not much more. Obviously, there's going to be a date later in March where he might come play here, which he did mention. But aside from that, this could be the last time that we really go in depth about Ben Simmons. So what were your takeaways from Ben's press conference today? Was there anything you liked, hated?
Yeah. I
Just in
mean,
general, how'd you feel?
First off, as much as I would like this to be the case of never talking about Ben Simmons again, I think there's going to be storylines and
Yeah.
rumors and reports and stuff that continues to start up throughout the rest of the year and leading into playoffs. So, as much as I want to get rid of him and get rid of talking about him, I think it's going to continue to leak out a little bit. And then, as far as today specifically, I mean, the first thing is it was just kind of weird to like see him up there speaking. Like it feels like this has been a guy like so far away from everything and such like away from the spotlight in hiding and just not in like the mainstream. To just see him like front and center again was very kind of just strange to see him up there talking, and is personally how I felt. And I mean it was a lot of what like personally I've come to expect from like a Ben Simmons press conference. Like there was I think there was a little too much made on the media side of things Philly wise, as far as like I think there was a lot of non-answers from him. I think there was a lot of dodging, a
Yeah.
lot of nothing's particular, which again that's what has been come to be expected in a Ben Simmons press conference. That's kind of his go-to for handling the media and how he answers questions. I mean, it was good to hear him clear things up, say some comments, and I guess just address things somewhat head on. But I I hated how it was interesting to me how he said how he talked to just about everybody when he in terms of Doc, Josh Harris, Daryl, but not Embiid. He didn't talk to Embiid. I think there is real talk, some bad blood there. And from Joel's perspective, there absolutely should be. Like he absolutely has been left out to dry by this guy. So I totally understand why Joel had no interest in picking up the phone and talking to him if that's how that went. And if there was no effort from Ben, which is absolutely the realm of possibility. I mean, it is what it is at that point too. So I guess on my end, I wasn't super moved either way from the press conference, but I'm glad. I guess we are gradually putting this to rest.
Yeah. I wrote about it today, and I said it was interesting to finally hear from the horse's mouth.
Yeah, yeah,
And he mentioned this, and this is something that like I don't know. I had a lot of mixed emotions because again, Ben was my guy. And when you see him in front of a Nets background and talking about his fit with Brooklyn, it makes me a little bit sick. Honestly, it makes me feel terrible. I for everything that I've ever wanted, this was the last thing. I know this is what it had to come to, and the Sixers still, in a fantastic position. So not that I'm mad or upset because the Sixers made out very well in this scenario, but
For sure.
it still is hard to see. It's literally watching my worst nightmare come true. We're living it out. So kind of sucks. That was my first thing, was just like, damn, dude, this really hurts. But to hear him talk about, I don't know. I had such weird emotions because, like you said, it was very. He was avoiding a lot of the answers. He didn't really
Yeah.
say that much. He did mention multiple times it wasn't a specific player or person or
Or
coach or the
comment.
fans
Mhm.
or comment, which I guess was nice to hear that it. But like, it also doesn't make it any better. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
He said it was about more just about him, and more that he didn't feel like himself. Which I want to talk about this a little bit, and there's two parts to this, and get your take on it as well. The speculation around his mental health right now, I think, is a very, very terrible discourse on both sides.
Yeah, very messy.
Very messy. And there's a couple things that can be true. One thing, Ben could have been dealing with things for a long time, and being out of Philadelphia could have relieved some of those hurdles, right? Let's be honest. Let's look at it this way, in a situation that some people can understand a little bit better. If you're in a toxic relationship and you finally break up with that girlfriend, a couple weeks after, you're probably feeling great, right?
Mhm.
That's the situation that Ben is in. And I said this a while ago. Reality is in the eye of the beholder. To Ben, this was a toxic relationship with him and the Sixers. To him, this was them against him, right? So, like, he's allowed to start feeling better. He's allowed to. Does that mean he definitely didn't maybe use those things to his advantage, knowing that it could help him get out of fines and get out of playing? Maybe that's also true. Both things can be true. Another thing that I've really hated about today is the discourse from major media sources blaming all of these things on the Sixers, and blaming all the things on the Philadelphia media, when they went out of their way just as much, if not more, to attack Ben Simmons. And whether
Mhm.
it's ESPN or Mina Kimes or Molly Hanneman, like, that's all bullshit. Let's
Yeah.
call that out right as it is. They took shots when it was available, and
Yeah.
now that it's popular to take his side, you're not allowed to go take his side, because someone that stood there and took bullet after bullet after bullet for him, me, even when it wasn't popular to defend his ass, I still did.
Yeah.
I still did. So don't switch sides now. If you hated him then, hate him then. If you hate him now, you know what I mean? So that stuff really bothered me today throughout the whole thing. Um, and I don't know. What is your take on that?
Yeah, I think you're spot on with all of that. I mean, there's a whole lot of bullshit with this, and I mean, to start with, like, I 100% believe that Ben has his own mental demons that he's fighting, his own mental issues that he's dealing with, and that he is dealing with those appropriately on his end. With that being said, it isn't cause effect. I don't think it's cause effect that his mental issues are what drove him out of Philly. I think they're separate issues, and sure, there's some
Yeah.
correlation with, like, that, like you said, like the toxic relation. He needed a restart. At the end of the day, that's what he needed for him, which is great. I'm glad he's getting it. But I also think using this as a leverage play in the situation is such bullshit on his end, on his camp's end, and everything. And the national media point, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm 100% in agreement. Like, it's been such twisted to be like Philly media and Philly fans as like the discourse here. It's like it wasn't Philly that was making jokes at the ESPYs about this guy. It wasn't these
Right.
national guys. It was this was like a national like punchline that, like, beyond anything that Philly was bringing, and to an extent that it never had really been brought out before. And I will say that there was like a turn of the tides on Ben Simmons, especially
Yeah.
after that game 7. But I just like the narrative that, like, he's been set up to fail here is just so wrong to me. And I hate that it's being brought up as like that Philly like didn't want this guy to succeed, because that wasn't the case. It never was the case. And sure, things went wrong. And like where I always get like pinned back of is, I think the root of all of these issues is, Ben, if you got better, like, we're not in this spot. Nobody is. You're not in the spot. This team is in the spot. And sure, like, maybe that's not entirely fair either. But it's like, there's just so many like it's been twisted in so many ways. And I also hate the flip nationally, as far as like, now the Nets won this trade. Now the Nets got so much, and it's like you are, these are the same, like, Daryl, the amount of like national ESPN Stephen A. Smith I've been furious about, from going from Daryl Morey needs to do something, Daryl Morey needs to get Ben Simmons out of there, Daryl Morey is wasting Embiid's prime, to then he goes out and gets James Harden, one of the like universal top 15 players in the NBA. And then now it's like they overpaid. They set the Nets up with the long term by giving him Simmons. It's like you can't just flip like that either. So there's a whole lot of flip flopping going on, a whole lot of wrongness being said. And I agree that nationally it's being twisted in an anti Philly kind of narrative, which definitely is pissing me off.
Yeah, and I mean, it would only happen that way, right? It's
For
only
sure.
it's only a
Yeah.
matter of
You
time for
expect
people
it.
to flip and blame everything on the Sixers and everything on Philadelphia. Let me say something because Ben said something interesting today, and there's two things. Because there's another thing that I noticed, and I'm sure that you also noticed, but something that I think a lot of people may miss in this. One, to before I get there, him saying, they should people that are like saying he can't, be happy there, saying, they should be happy for me. They should be happy to see that I'm smiling and that I'm enjoying myself. Genuinely, on a person to person level, I am happy for him. I don't want him I don't want this to be like we can hate Ben for what he did. We can hate Ben when he's on the court against us, and I'm sure that we will. But for a person to person value, I'm happy that he's happy, and maybe it was time for this breakup to happen. Unfortunately, he goes to a good team. He's going to make them good, but on a person to person level, I'm happy he's happy. Do I wish success for the Brooklyn Nets? Absolutely not. Am I going to root for him when he plays for against the Sixers? Absolutely not. But to the thing I really wanted to point out was they were asking about play style and everything, and he
Yeah.
he explicitly referenced the 2018 playoff series against the Miami Heat. Name dropped JJ Redick, Marco Bellinelli, Dario Saric. For those that don't remember, which I'm sure most of you do, for those that don't remember, Joel Embiid broke his orbital bone a couple weeks before that,
Running into Markel Fultz's shoulder.
running into Markel Fultz. He missed a lot of time. They went on that run, right,
Mhm.
without him, went into the playoffs. Ben was, the catalyst for those wins. Go into the Miami Heat series. I think he missed the first two games, but they were playing really well. And
Mhm.
he said, I want to share the ball. I want everyone to eat. I want everyone to score. I'm a team player. I'm a playmaker. And that was a really nuanced dig at Joel
Yeah.
that I don't know if a lot of people really picked up on. But when I heard that, I paused it and I was with my roommates. I paused it. I said, did you catch that? Because that was the only time I really throughout the whole press conference where he went back and made a dig um, at Joel. Because that's very specifically what he was doing, was saying, I want to play where everyone gets to touch the ball and everyone gets to score. And while obviously all of us are saying Embiid wanted you to score, of course, he wanted you to
Mhm.
win. He wanted you to get better. He wanted you to do things, and he changed the way that he played for you. And obviously, we see the reality of it. But that situation, that was an interesting statement that he made. I wanted to see how you felt about that,
Yeah, I mean, I noticed that as well. Very interesting. I mean, first off, if you want to playing a free flowing, isolation free offense, being paired with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, probably next not your best move there. And the report today that from Jake Fisher
bro.
saying how James Harden played in isolation, wanted to play isolation style, and these two wanted more free flowing. It's just laughable because Kyrie specifically is even more isolation based than Harden, and Harden out of the three is far and away the best passer and the guy that orchestrates thing in a way that the other two just frankly don't. So
Yeah,
I just don't think there's remotely any truth to that rumor, and I think that's a lot of saving face on the Nets part there. And then from Simmons' side, I think I think when Morey came in here, Morey absolutely prioritized building around Joel, and I think Ben took offense to that, which you can look at it and
yeah,
say I'm not feeling as equal. But if you're looking at this from a neutral perspective, look what Joel Embiid is. This guy is legitimately, he's leading the NBA in scoring. He's legitimately running away with the MVP race. He's a grade A superstar, a guy that's well respected around the entire league. It's no shit we want to build around this guy. No,
yeah,
obviously there's a difference between comparing these two. And Ben Simmons, who he is a fine player and he does a lot of things that plenty of guys can't, but he's such a niche role player that can help a team. I still firmly believe you cannot build a team around Ben Simmons in a way. And now, granted, he's in a great position that he has Kevin Durant next to him and Kyrie Irving, and half the time Kyrie Irving. And so he's going to be able to do his thing on this platform, and he will look very good at times because of the situation. But he's a situational kind of superstar in a sense, and I think it's generous even saying superstar at all. So, and also when we flip back to the from Ben Simmons camp and everything, there's just such a disconnect from like reality with these guys. And this is like dating back to him saying how he didn't blame Joel after the Raptors series. It's like, no shit, this guy was a plus 89 in the minutes and while you were a minus 16 for the series. And it's like, you just can't blame this guy because it wasn't his fault. So I would hope you're not blaming him. And then I had an interesting conversation. It was a kind of an off the record conversation. So I want to call out the reporter I was with, but it was very like an intel from what Simmons camp had like given their gripes with the Sixers organization and just diving through it and how that they were having all these unreasonable requests. Like one of the biggest complaints was the therapist that the Sixers allowed Simmons to keep meeting with his therapist, and they requested that he had to fill out these surveys and forms after each meeting, and how like upset they were about that. And it's like what do you want them to do? Just like trust you that it's your like we're trying to work together here. And there's just like throughout the whole thing, it just felt like there's such like a uh, and like again, this doesn't make his feelings like invalid. Like you for sure are fair to feel how you feel about it, but it's like you have to like live in the reality of what the world is, and
Yeah.
it's like deal with things in that way. And the fact that there's just like that component missing so much times, it's like this was never going to work.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that this scenario, this situation at hand, the way that him and his people saw the way that this was going to play out was much different than the way it actually did. Uh, and beginning from the Jimmy Butler trade and everything from there on out, I think that there was the question marks surrounding him were becoming true right in front of our faces, and it took us a while to notice. But regardless, it's just a weird situation that the way that it's played out, and it's concluded. But there were some other things I want to talk about just right before we switch over because I do want to talk more extensively about James Harden and get past this. They asked him if he knew when he was going to be ready to play. He said, "I have no timetable, but hopefully soon." Then the question following was, you play in Philadelphia March 10th. Are you going to be ready? He said, "I hope so," which
Mhm.
was surprising to me, but who knows? Maybe he will, maybe he won't. It'll be surprising if he does play. And then there was also another one. They asked about the rivalry between Philadelphia and Brooklyn, and if that's something that he sees in the future with them. And he said, "Yeah, I think so. Looking back on the series between us a while ago, there was the rivalry and the Jared Dudley situation and everything, and but he likes it better that way, which was something that I laughed at because
Yeah. And
history would speak otherwise."
so funny
Sorry, go ahead.
Jared Dudley's the guy that like stirred his pot that got him going. It's like if you want to be the level of superstar that like you think you are, you can't be going toe to toe with Jared Dudley, man. Like that's just not you should not be in the same level, and to like make that your like reason to get up for this game is crazy to me. It was at the time and it still is looking back.
Yeah, I mean, so it's I don't know like. Do you think he's gonna play? Honestly,
N No. No, not at all. I think there will be some way where he, tweaks something or whatever, but I just cannot imagine this guy walking back in the Wells Fargo Center anytime soon, especially, like, we're talking within, like, a 3-week span of him actually coming here, which is I just can't wrap my mind around it happening.
yeah, it'll be interesting. But enough about him. We've talked enough
Yeah.
about him, and if you want to check that out, I mean, there's plenty of things going on, so you're not missing too much if we're cutting this short at all. If there's things that we're missing, very available to go check out that press conference. But James Harden and Paul Millsap were introduced today as well. Um, in a much more subdued, I felt like a much more subdued type of interview. So there's a lot of questions that were asked, a lot of good answers, and I felt really good following that press conference. And I mean, of course, I did. It's James Harden, uh, playing for the Sixers. The pictures still don't seem real of him in the Sixers uni. It looks great on him, but it's
Yeah.
still feels a little bit surreal. I won't lie. The whole situation does with Ben in Brooklyn and James Harden here. It feels a little bit strange. But tell me your takeaways from that press conference going out of that.
Yeah, there's definitely an aspect of both these guys trying to like flex on like, well, my new chick's hotter, and mine like
Yeah.
that kind of aspect. I feel to both the press conferences, but with Harden specifically, like I felt very good about everything that was said. I think he's very cool. He said how he has always wanted to be in Philly, dating back to when he first met out of Houston, and I think that's important given like the mindset that that matters with Harden, that he's locked in. I think he genuinely wants to be here, which is important. I love the answer. He said how Philly still like. Let me get the exact quote up, but basically that he would be fitting into what the Sixers already having go on, which I think is like again huge for the mindset and everything. He said, they asked about his fit with Embiid in the Sixers, and he said, "quote Joel does everything on the floor. Listen, they have something great going on here. I'm just here to contribute," which is a great mindset, great way to fit in. The respect for Joel was very clear on the way he brought him
Yeah.
up, called him the best big man in the game, rightfully so. A lot of just compliments there. You can tell there's like an at-home feeling, and there is like a legitimate support system around Harden already. When we talk about Morey, Tad Brown, Michael Rubin, all these guys that he generally has connections with. So I think this is a great spot for him. And then on court, it just makes sense. So I'm excited to see it. And like you said, it doesn't quite feel real yet.
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait, man. And there
Yeah,
was a lot of optimism. You talk about when they asked if he thinks that they're competing for a championship, he said, "Hell yeah."
yeah,
This year, hell yeah. After the break, it's on.
hmm
I mean, you have to love that type of thing. You gotta love that he's in it. Like you said, a lot of people are questioning his commitment to team basketball. A lot of people are questioning his commitment to, you know, being a co-star. Like he hasn't done it for years. Like he literally was a third co-star. He's leading the league in assists per game. Like we're acting like he doesn't distribute the ball.
yeah,
He is a genius with the basketball. Like I really implore everyone listening, go look up on YouTube James Harden passing highlights and tell me that he's not literally a passing maestro. Like he does everything that Ben has done facilitating the ball and more as a ball handler in the pick and roll. He's the first guard we've had in years that can dribble, shoot, and pass like all at a high level. Like there's just I don't I really again I'm so ecstatic about the what he's going to be able to do for everyone on this team, Joel included. But for Tobias, he said he can get you 20 a night. It's my
yeah,
job to make sure he gets you 20. That's the type of point guard that you need, bro. Like that is the type of guy that is going to know what Tobias is good at, know where he's best on the floor in terms of getting his shots off, and he's going to get him the ball in those spots at those times when he needs the ball to score. He's going to make Tobias so much better. You talk about what he said about Maxey and how he could definitely be an all-star in this league and how Matisse Thybulle could be defensive player of the year. Like he came in here with the idea of I love this roster. I can make everyone better. And in turn, I can be the old James Harden. I can be myself and just do my thing. And I literally just listening to him talk, listening to the way that he talks about everyone on the team, with the way he talked about Joel. I can't wait for him to get on the floor because I think it's really going to be like I think people right now are looking at the way that he played in Brooklyn over the last couple weeks and being like, he's not going to do that much. I think people are going to be surprised and they're going to put the league on notice very, very quickly once he steps on the floor in his Sixers uniform.
yeah. A couple points here. First off, there was a lot more talk about Tobias than I expected, which I think is
Yeah.
cool. I think him being in the plans, and he turns into a matchup kind of nightmare now. Like when we talk about Tobias is no longer like a second focal point. When we're talking about how we're matching up, like obviously Joel's going to demand a ridiculous amount of attention. Harden's going to have to take the primary perimeter defender. Maxey's probably going to have to take the second primary perimeter
Yeah.
defender. If Toby's getting the third option defensively, that changes the game for him as far as matching up. And if this is any guy under like 6'7", we're now back into where Toby post ups aren't looking as ugly. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of potential for that to work. For Maxey now, you can tell there's respect on Harden's end for Maxey already, which I think speaks volumes to what this guy means in basketball circles and the respect he's already garnished in basketball circles. The clips of at practice that it's just Maxey and Harden literally paired up going through the shooting drills and stuff. So cool to me. And so like we already know what like a sponge Maxey is as far as like taking things and learning how hard he works. To surround him with Harden and put him in the chance to learn like this is going to be in the long run just so beneficial for him. And I really think long term speaking, the Sixers are eventually going to hand the keys to the organization to this kid. And I think he's going to be ready when the time comes. And we're seeing that already. And I think it's very cool the respect that Harden seems to already have. He talked about like his aggressiveness already and just like his willingness to learn everything. And we're talking about these guys have like really known each other for like not like 2 days now,
24
something like
hours.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm very excited for what that can become. And then For Joel, I want to give a special like just thank you to Joel Embiid. Like aside from the obvious reason and just like the connection that I think me personally and I think the entire city just feels to this guy, just the ability to the way he's continued to work and continue to improve his game made all of this possible. Like James Harden specifically looked at Joel Embiid and the rest of his team and said, I won a championship and this is my best chance. This is a better chance for me to win a championship than playing next to Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. I believe in Joel Embiid to take me there. And I believe that me being his co star is my best chance to get that ring on my finger, which is so cool. So awesome for Joel to just keep elevating his game, becoming the player that, like, I can't even pretend like he's the guy that we thought he was going to be because he's exceeded my expectations at this point, and I think everybody. So this probably all isn't possible if it isn't for Joel willing this team into the position they are right now and just the heroic performances that we've seen all year. So just thank you to Joel and super shout out for that.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't even get to talk about that dunk and the
Oh
40-point
yeah,
triple
yeah,
double. Dog, come on. That's the best dunk of his career by like a lot. That
yeah,
was
yeah.
disgusting.
He
I
rarely,
popped up out of my seat.
me too. He rarely puts guys on posters, and that was like, and Jared Allen, who's a very valid defender too. Not like he was picking on the
Great
weak
shot
press.
blocker.
Yeah,
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 great shot block.
awesome.
And right after he was leaning over, holding his bag, he's like, it hurt his back. Goes to the free throw line, misses, and then puts him on a poster with, in a 40-point triple double in 33 minutes. We don't even have to talk about it because honestly, like we all know, we've been through this. But like you said, man, it's surreal. Again, it really is that James Harden literally sat down and the first thing that he said was, "This is where I wanted to be all along.
Mhm.
This was my first choice. This is where I wanted to be. It didn't work out the first time, but here I am." That's insanity. We've been talking about people have been talking about how no one wants to play in Philly for years, and now James Harden of all people is like, I want to go there, and
Yeah,
I want to play with him. That's crazy. That's such a great turn of events and a great change of the script. And then when you talk about the fans, man, like he talked about how the Philly fans are the best in the NBA. I was driving home from the Lehigh Valley this weekend. I was driving back to the city, and like I saw three different billboards. The beard is here.
yeah,
Like people love this dude. One, I think people would have loved him anyway. Like, regardless of how he got here, if he got here one way or another, people would have loved him. But the situation at hand, the way that this all played out, the way that he, said, I want out of Brooklyn, I want to come be in Philadelphia. Like, I think that there's going to be some mutual, real type of love between the city and James Harden, and I really hope that this is going to be home for him for a while. He did say he opted in to that next year, so he's going to be at least here for another year after this one. I like again, like we said, this is the best chance that they have. I really think that they have like the building blocks. They didn't like keeping Maxi and Thibault was so big in this
oh yeah,
when you're talking about that, and then when you're looking at it like they have the young pieces, like you said, Maxi's going to take over as Joel and James Harden progress past their primes. Like Maxi's right there to start his prime. So
yeah.
I don't know. I'm terribly excited for this, and unfortunately, it's going to be a little bit before we see James Harden. But like I think we're all chomping at the bit to get him on the floor and playing with this team.
Yeah, definitely wish it would have been sooner, but in the end, probably the right decision. Hold him out after the All-Star
Yeah,
break. Make sure that hamstring's right because you don't want that to linger. And I think it is, but I think he's probably fine and probably would be good to go. But at the same time, there's no sense risking it. And 2 games before the All-Star break, might as well push it back, get him completely healthy, completely comfortable. And again, it's a whole different deal going through his shooting drills versus playing live basketball. So you never know if it's not 100% up to ability. And very cool watching the step back threes, him and Joel today at practice. That was just very awesome to me. Just seeing a guy like Embiid just really trying to replicate it, just really trying to learn from Harden. And there's no doubt in my mind that will be in his bag
yeah.
very shortly.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what isn't in his bag? If that's the only thing that's
Yeah.
left to add, he's gonna add it pretty soon. Like, and again, he's on another planet right now. They can rely on him tonight and Thursday to get this done before the break and go into that with a confident, comfortable spot in the Eastern Conference. And like I said, man, like this is gonna be fun. There's a lot left to work on. And like we could talk about the rotations a little bit. So I
Real, real
personally think that go ahead,
Real
go ahead.
quick, I want to touch on too. There's been some whispers of the Mike D'Antoni to Philly connection. We need to chill on that. That like,
Yeah.
neither you or I are the biggest Doc Rivers defender, but this is not remotely the time for that type of conversation. And
No.
I will say, like, as much as I've been critical of Doc, the thing that has held back the Sixers from winning a championship, especially during his tenure here, was purely the lack of top end talent. Regardless of who was coaching, the Sixers would not have won the championship last year. And now this is a different situation. Now that the top end talent is there, we do have James Harden and Joel Embiid. So now is the time to fully judge Doc Rivers on how he manages this team, how things move forward. And we saw James Harden speak incredibly highly of Doc Rivers today. So I think it should be clear that Doc Rivers is the coach of the Sixers team. This is his opportunity to run with it. He deserves a fair shot, and let's see it happen.
Yeah, and those reports were apparently shot down very quickly,
Yes, yes.
when brought up. So, I mean, and who do you know who originally reported that? Because that's just like a
It
toss out of
was
left field.
Yeah,
Like,
it was in the Jake Fisher article and also the Yaron Weitzman article. There was mentions of it both in there. And also, dude, I would feel a little bit gross just, replicating the whole Rockets organization with
yeah, I
just
don't want Mike D'Antoni.
yeah,
We
I
can
don't I
keep him
neither do
wherever.
I might even stick with Doc over D'Antoni in general, to be honest, which is
I would. I
yeah.
wanted. I was more like when the coaching search was going on,
Mhm,
after they let go of Brett Brown. Like Doc was not the number one on my list, but Mike D'Antoni was much further down the list than Doc. So, I maybe if he was brought on as like an assistant and he was in the room or in the area, well, that'd be one thing.
mhm.
But I think the coaching staff that they have right now is more
Very
than
good.
equipped to handle this situation. So yeah, I totally agree with you. Thank you, but no thank you, Mike D'Antoni.
Yeah.
Stay over there. We don't need it right now. But like I said, we can go into the rotations a little
Mhm.
bit before we close this out, because there's still some speculation. There's still some guesses on what might happen, and obviously they have some time to figure this out and what works best, and they'll probably play with it throughout the rest of the season before they really settle in their last couple of weeks before they go into the playoffs. But I think I'm starting to really become a believer in that Maxey should. I mean, I think I was anyway, but going into this, like I kind of weighed the idea of Maxey going to the bench, and I think that I really want him to stay in the starting lineup, and whether that be Danny Green or Matisse starting in the three spot, I don't really mind either way. Um, we could also talk about buyout market options if you wanted to go into that really quick. But what's your opinion still right now? After a couple of days removed from this trade, who do you think is going to be the starting five?
Yeah, I don't mind Maxey going to the bench, to be honest. I think more likely than not, when it all is said and done, that it's probably I think we'll see a couple different starting lineups before anything's decided. But I think as we
Yeah,
go into playoffs, it will probably be Harden, Embiid, Tobias, Green, and Thibault as the starting five is my prediction. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I like Maxey with the second unit. The one thing I will say is having Harden and Embiid is such a different dynamic than we've had before. And like you have to make sure you're staggering their minutes and that you don't have both those guys off the court. And especially when you lump in Maxi and Tobias, uh well, I will jump back on the critical of Doc if it's a flat out Cardinal sin if none of those four players are on the court at any point in time during any game.
yeah,
So you need to make sure you rotate those fine. He mentioned that talking about subbing in pairs, which I don't hate the idea of, but I think when you break it down like that, it probably goes down to Harden and Embiid and Tobias and Maxi, which I don't 100% love. I would like to see Harden run the bench unit. I think like he can
yeah.
elevate them enough that they're like a very legitimate unit, and just his passing ability, just being able to run an offense, create passes, just elevates him enough to that like we'll still win those minutes. So I would like to make sure Harden and Embiid are staggered in the rotation.
Yeah, I think there should be some fluidity,
Mhm.
like not like I feel like Doc has always had this like structured idea in his mind where it's like, okay, unit one is out, unit two is in, and unit two's done. Okay, unit one's going back in. I don't think that's how basketball works anymore. Uh, and if you watch any other team, that's not really how it works. The guys come in and come out and come in and come out and replace whoever it is. And like when you think about it, replacing Tobias in the starting line, not replacing him in the starting lineup, but after a handful of minutes, if Niang comes in that spot floor spacer, and you can, bring in Furkan or whoever it is. And I think like adding kind of mixing those guys in with Embiid and with Harden or with Embiid and Maxi or with like I think there should just be a little bit more of a fluid situation with the rotations, and we'll see how it goes. Doc did mention that he probably won't see many minutes without one of those 4 guys on the floor, which is a great sign from him because we've seen how that happens before, and that was a big thing last year. Like, the minutes where Ben was on the floor and Joel wasn't, like, were rare. And,
Yeah.
there could have been a different situation there, but not to look backwards because we're looking forwards here. So before we go, is there anyone in the buyout market right now that you're looking at? I love Moses Brown.
Okay.
Kind of out of left field. A UCLA boy, one of my guys from the Bruins. So Moses Brown, 7'2" rebounder. Uh,
Mhm.
Brown, or I'm sorry, what was Tony Bradley?
Tony
I was
Bradley.
trying to like a very very similar type player.
Okay.
Gonna give you defensive minutes, rebounds, nothing special, but could give you a couple minutes a game. There's a lot of guys though that are on the market right now. Are you looking at anyone particular?
So the first thing I want to say is I think the need for a big man is a little overstated. I think I have a lot more belief in the group we have right now. I think Millsap is not a zero. I think he'll play some
Yeah,
legitimate rotational minutes and help the team. I also am excited to see Charles Bassey with James Harden,
yeah,
especially in the pick and roll. Because when you think back to Harden's just track record with big men, it's very similar to what Charles Bassey plays like. His frame, all really Harden needs is a guy that can catch lobs, roll strong, do little things, all very teachable things when you have like the body and frame and athletic ability that Bassey has. And also B-ball Paul, he's been awesome these past 2 games, especially. So him getting the first kind of notch at minutes has been like super exciting to me, and I love seeing it. I've been a B-ball Paul fan for since he's been with the Sixers, and I would love to see him earn some legitimate time. So I don't think it's as big a need for a big man as I think a lot of people do. A name that has jumped out to me a little bit is Tyreek Evans getting reinstated. I think that would
yeah,
be an interesting little a local kid, Chester guy, reinstated after a drug issue, but good to go now. And I think adding a wing, some depth there, some athleticism, some scoring ability, I think that would be an interesting punch to add to the bench rotation.
yeah. I think like you said, I also think that there's a chance that they waive somebody and add 2 players. If there's some guys that pique their interest, and if Goran Dragic's on the table, I think you go get him if possible. It
hmm
looks like a lot of teams have interest in him, but
Yeah, I
I don't know.
doubt he finds his way to Philly. I think it would be a for sure a good addition. I think there's too much. He's gonna go somewhere where I think there's more time available to him. Is my sense of it. And I also again with Maxey and Harden are gonna pretty much run the entire point guard minutes between the two of them. So I don't. It would be nice to add, but and with Shake coming back, Shake impressed me as a passer since he's come back. He seems to have been adding that more and more to
Yeah.
his game, and he seems to be reading the game much better than he typically does. So I have faith in between the three of them that they can carry enough. So I would say I'm not as like this Sixers team is more complete than I think people are giving it credit for.
Yeah, I can agree with that. It's just like if there's supplemental value out there,
For sure,
I
yeah,
think they could go get somebody, whether that be a big, just for the depth aspect of it. Paul Reed has impressed when he got to play the other night. The last
yeah.
2 games, he's really impressed me. And
Everything but the dunk. Everything but the dunk.
the dunk was funny though, man. The dunk was funny, and the fact that they made fun of him in the pregame of the next game, and then he did the dunk after the whistle, the night after, like, there was a
Yeah,
loose ball, dead ball whistle, and he did the dunk, and everyone kinda went crazy. It's funny, but he played really well, and, like, I don't know, they mention it so much on the broadcast that it kinda gets overdone, but, like, there's a reason that, like, he ends up with loose balls all the time. He's just running. Like, he
yeah,
just runs and gets in the way and tips the ball loose and knocks everything around, and he's clumsy, but it's a good type of clumsy. Like, you want him to be in the mix because he's always doing something. And even if he doesn't get the ball, sometimes he just screws the play up a little bit, and that's enough for them. So Paul Reed getting minutes, Bassey getting minutes, like you said, I think he matches what Harden does well with that type. And like again, I think Bassey's gonna really mold into like just a very solid backup.
yeah,
What we talked about how well he plays in the pick and roll and how he's just like a natural guy going down the lane and keeps his hands ready, lob threat, rim protector, rim runner. There's a lot of different ways that you can use these guys, and with a wing, whether it's Tyreek Evans, Gary Harris is out there. There's a couple guys, there's a handful of guys out there that you could go get, but again, maybe they don't want to, maybe they're just fine. They have a roster spot, so I would be surprised if they don't take a flyer on somebody.
yeah. They'll
Whether
fill it for sure.
Maybe it is Tyreek Evans, and that would be cool with me. I have no problem with that at all. He's an OG 2K player for me.
For
So,
sure.
there's a chance that that happens, but who knows?
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure they'll fill it. They'll throw somebody in there. But yeah, my take on Paul Reed since he's been here is he's madness on a basketball court, but it's in a positive way. And I genuinely do
Yeah.
believe there's like something there worth like trying to develop and seeing what can turn into. And I mean, obviously Drummond was terrific in the time here and it exceeded my expectations for how good he was with the Sixers team. But I don't think it's that big of a drop off for what they have. And I mean, we've been killed by the Joel-less minutes for quite some time, but I think Harden is more of a solution than any backup center could be to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you don't think twice about that deal. And like they said, Maury said today, he wishes he didn't have to give up Drummond, but it was a must in the Nets deal. They wanted him without question. They wanted him, and that's what had to happen to get James Harden. So fallen soldiers are respected, but nonetheless, the war moves forward, and you take this chance on James Harden to go forward and try to win a championship because he means a lot more to that than Andre Drummond does. As much as you do like Drummond, because I think we all learned somehow to love Andre Drummond in a weird way. It's a
Yeah.
strange turn of events the way that happened, but it did. So nonetheless, I think we can wrap it up here. We talked a lot
Mhm.
about Ben and Harden today. There's a lot more to come. They play the Celtics tonight. What you
Mhm.
say? They're +2 tonight.
Yep. So plus 115 on the money line. Make sure to jump on BetUS promo code PickSwap. And yeah, I do feel Sixers win tonight. So I'm feeling confident. The vibes are good right now. And let's end the All Star going into the All Star break strong.
Yeah, man, I already put money on it. I got $25 on that already. So,
What?
uh, whether or not it works out for me, who knows? I don't win any of my bets. I went winless in the Super Bowl
Damn.
for all my bets. Unfortunately, lost lost some money, which was unfortunate. But it's the way my life goes. I'm terrible at betting. I'll do it anyway. You can follow Sean at Sean_Bernard1. Follow me at JSbrain17. Follow the pod at PickSwapPod. Check out the YouTube. Find us anywhere you listen to your podcasts. And we'll talk to you guys on Thursday.